Hi guys, it's Reagan and welcome back to another video. Today's video is a fun one because it is a book haul. If there's one thing I'm good at doing, it's accumulating a lot of books. And this summer, in my opinion, has a lot of really amazing releases coming out. I feel like all of my book hauls are going to be rather hefty, but without further ado, let's go ahead and dive right in. The first book I'm going to show off is a pre-order that I'm actually currently reading, and that is Witch King by Martha Wells. This is Martha Wells' dive back into fantasy after dabbling in science fiction with her very beloved Murderbot series, which I've also been reading and really enjoying. The setup of this was really calling out to me. It's also blurred by some of my favorite authors, so needless to say, this was a very highly anticipated release, so I was waiting down the days for it to arrive on my doorstep. This book follows our main character, Kai, and Kai is a very powerful demon, and at the beginning of this book, he sort of regains consciousness and realizes that he has been trapped in an underwater, water prison. He doesn't know how he got there. He doesn't know who put him there. He knows when he wakes up, he's gotta go out and find answers to these questions. This book is one that will really catch you by surprise. It's definitely structurally one of those stories that when you read it, you are just as confused as our main character because he's obviously trying to figure out what in the world is going on, but you're also a reader who's trying to piece together how this world works, who these characters are, how magic works. Both of these unknown plot elements makes for a very engaging reading experience. I've personally flown through the first little bit that I have been able to read. I love the characters, has found family components to it, but obviously I'll hold off from a full review. But that is what this book is about. It's full of magic and politics. Moving on to my first box. I didn't bring scissors or anything to open any of these things with, so I'm just gonna use my raw strength. Haha. I am not even fully sure what's in these boxes. Oh, she's a big one. Right, I'm actually obsessed with this paperback, but the next book I have to show off is the Black Jewels trilogy by Anne Bishop. This is a bind-up, and holy moly is it a bind-up. This is over 1,000 pages, and there's something about giant paperbacks that I am truly obsessed with, and this is such a nice one. The Black Jewels trilogy is one of Anne Bishop's most notable trilogies. It's also one of her older series that she's still writing within the universe of. I think there's lots of spin-offs, lots of characters kind of getting their own books, but this is where the whole thing sort of kicks off. I love Anne Bishop's writing. I love her urban fantasy writing, but I'm excited to kind of check out more of her dark high fantasy. I feel like she does such a great job combining romance and great character politics, and her romantic pacing is always one I really enjoy. Synopsis says, 700 years ago, a black widow witch saw a prophecy play out in the threads of her dark web. Now the dark realm readies itself for the arrival of its queen, the person who will be able to wield more power than even the Prince of Hell itself. Queen herself is still very young and impressionable. Whoever controls the queen controls her power, or so they think. And three men who are all enemies, I think, vie for this ability. I'm really curious about this, especially because I feel like it's going to be much more the synopsis plays off. Clearly, this queen, who is young and impressionable, is hopefully going to be taking center stage within this narrative, and I'm sure she doesn't really love being assumed that she's young and impressionable. So I'm excited to see how this book is going to play out. I feel like I could really get addicted to this. It could be a great summer read, just something to really pull me in. I feel like, this is kind of OG romantasy in a way. Well, we'll see. I'm looking forward to it. It's award-winning and beloved. If any of y'all have read this, please let me know. I am so pumped about it. Next up, I have a very beautiful edition, and that is the Frugal Wizard's Handbook for Surviving Medieval England by Brandon Sanderson. This is Brandon Sanderson's Secret Project #2, and I got the leatherbound edition of this rather early. I feel like I waited for Tress for quite a few months, but this arrived right in the end part of May, which I wasn't expecting. Like all of the special editions, this is chock full of illustrations, full page color illustrations throughout the entire thing, and the vibe of them, I'm trying to not look through too closely because I want to be surprised myself, is so cool. I get the feeling this book is going to be cheeky and fun. I have not read the synopsis. I have kind of tried to avoid too much information about this book because I kind of just want to go in and see what happens, but I will be reading this edition. As I mentioned in a previous video, I read Tress via ebook, which I really enjoyed, but I didn't get to enjoy all the stunning illustrations that these special editions provide. But I feel like for the remaining secret projects, I'm going to try to wait for the leather bind-ups to arrive so I can read them in the full experience that they could offer, you know what I mean? But this is another book that I have gotten recently. I need to pick this up. I really feel like I'm going to enjoy this. Next up, I picked up A House with Good Bones by T. Kingfisher. I love T. Kingfisher, and I'm just kind of trying to collect all of her books. This is a recent release by this author, and it's actually a gothic horror story, or southern gothic horror story. At least that's my assumption based off of the synopsis. But in the story, we follow our main character, Sam, and she is currently traveling home to stay with her mom for an extended stay. She loves her mom. They're very, very close. They watch murder mysteries together. They cook, they bake, they hang out. She's hoping for a good time, but her brother's words are sort of echoing in her ear, which are, something seems off with mom. And when she arrives to her mother's home, she steps inside. The space has changed. The walls, which were once warm and comforting, have all been painted a sterile white, and her mother seems very much on edge, jumping even when no one else is in the room with her. When Sam begins to do a little bit of investigating, she finds a jar of teeth behind one of the rose bushes in her backyard, and vultures are circling the house up in the sky. Something appears off, and it's up to Sam to try to figure out what is going on with her mom and this house. I love T. Kingfisher's writing. I'm really curious to see how she's going to blend horror with her otherwise, I feel like, quirky and charming character setup. This could not be quirky or charming at all. This could just be straightforward horror. But either way, I'm looking forward to see how this book is going to unfurl. I just really enjoy this author's writing. This is also not too long. And there's something about like gothic haunted house, like southern set horror stories that I personally really enjoy. I don't read a lot of horror, but the southern version of it, for some reason, always kind of like calls out to me a little bit. Next book I picked up is a fantasy classic that my brother actually really convinced me to buy, and that is Shadow and Claw, which is the first half of the Book of the New Sun by Gene Wolfe. This is apparently like considered one of the pillars of modern science fiction and fantasy. I have not read it. My brother says it's very, very excellent. On the back, it says, this author has been called the finest writer the science fiction world has yet produced. I think this originally came out in like 1980, and they recently like bundled the stories together into collections. This is the first half, and I believe 2 books within this original series by Gene Wolfe. And in the story, we follow our main character, Severin, who's an apprentice to the Guild of Torturers. But Severin has been exiled and shunned by this guild by committing their greatest act of treason, and that is showing mercy. This book has a lot of praise on the back. Like, people are saying this is comparable in the importance to the major works by Tolkien and Lewis, one of the most ambitious works of speculative fiction in the 20th century. I mean, I feel like that's like high praise, big selling point, so I'm curious about this. Also, anecdotally, my brother did really enjoy it, so I'm curious about this. I want to read it, I want to explore it for myself, and I feel like it's going to be a heavy read, definitely, but I feel like it could be one that I could really enjoy. So I saw this at the bookstore and I decided to grab it because I also have no self-control when I'm inside a bookstore. I have to buy at least 1 or 2 books every time I'm there. Alrighty, it's time to open up another package. These ones are always so weird to open. I feel like I always break a nail, if I'm being honest. Oh, yes. Okay, I'm so excited about this. All right, the next book I have to show off is Age of Empire by Michael J. Sullivan. This is the 6th and final book to the Legends of the First Empire series, which I'm officially entirely caught up on, well, except the 6th book. So needless to say, I was looking forward to buying this and adding it to my shelf. I will be reading this very, 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 very soon. The Legends of the First Empire series has catapulted into probably one of my favorite fantasy series of all time. Just the style of writing, the characters, the pastoral nature of it, the different acts that are played out between both sections of the series. I've fallen head over heels in love with everything that Michael J. Sullivan has done. But as I've said a million times on my channel, the Legends of the First Empire series follows a plethora of characters, but it's basically set in an ancient fantasy setting, following humans, elves, and dwarves. For the longest time, all of these groups have kind of been in conflict with one another, and humans in particular have kind of been in a very regressed state of their society. And at the beginning of the series, they are worshiping the elves as gods. But at the beginning of the book, a human accidentally kills an elf, kind of upending this religious perspective and also creating a long simmering conflict between these groups of people. From there, we see the fast track of like human society and innovation occur. We also begin to see the unfolding of a prophecy, and also the larger scope of this world, including gods and different forces and powers involved in the inner workings of everything happening. Again, full of quests and war, great characters, and you're reading from so many different points of views on so many different points of the conflict too. It's just completely engrossing. I just finished the 5th book. It was excellent. I need to know how the whole thing is going to wrap up in this 6th and final installment. Truly obsessed. Michael J. Sullivan, It's gonna be a Michael J. Sullivan summer for me. I'm just saying. Speaking of a fantasy book I cannot wait to pick up, I also have The Spear Cuts Through Water by Simon Jimenez. I feel like this book is really underrated, but the people who have read it love it. The reviews are so strong. And also just reading into the synopsis and hearing what people are saying about it, it also feels like a book I could absolutely adore and could really catapult, like, again, up there on one of my favorite fantasy reads. So I have a lot of expectations going to this, but I have like a strong feeling it could also very easily live up to that like hype, you know? This is set in a fantasy world where for centuries the Moon Throne has kind of ruled with an iron fist. It's basically an evil despotic emperor and his sons. They run wild and do whatever they want. And the reason why they're able to basically have all this unchecked power is that they have enslaved gods within their castle and they utilize their magic. At the beginning of this book though, it appears that there's some individuals in the castle that are able to break these gods free, and I believe a quest begins to unfold from there. I've heard from a few reviewers that it's best to go into this and kind of just experience it, so I'm very excited about that. I feel like the writing is going to be amazing just based on this author's other works too. I just can't wait. I'm pumped to read this book. I think I'm going to be reading it soon. Every time I look at this stunning cover, I want to pick it up and read it right away. Next up, I have Everyone Knows Your Mother is a Witch by Rivka Galchen. I saw this book at the bookstore and it was first and foremost, I'm not going to lie, a cover buy. I am obsessed with the aesthetics of this, but when I read the synopsis, because I don't just generally buy books based on how they look, I also felt like it was going to be a story that would really, really appeal to me. This book centers a woman who lives in a small community. It's a historical fiction tale, and this woman basically does herself no favors in the way that she's really outspoken. She is involved in like science and the medicinal arts, and so obviously when fears of witchcraft and kind of the witch craze begin to occur, she very quickly becomes an easy target. This is a work of fiction, but the synopsis really calls out that the author directly references and utilizes like historical records and text to influence this work of fiction, which I find to be really, really interesting. I took a few witch-specific history classes in my undergrad in school, so this particular topic is just always interesting to me, and I really like that this seems to be utilizing like real historical references throughout it as well, and I wonder if they will be sourced or not. I don't know. I'm very intrigued by this. It has good reviews. My friend Monica also has this book and she gave it a bit of a shout out as well, so I grabbed it and I'm really looking forward to picking it up. Next up, I have a stunning book by an author I have been meaning to buy a book from and also just read his books for a long time. And the book is City of Last Chances by Adrian Tchaikovsky. I believe this author is most known for their works within the sci-fi space, like some of the most famous sci-fi books, but he also writes fantasy, and this is his new release. Truth be told, I am absolutely obsessed with this synopsis, and I almost fear that me just summarizing it, which is what I typically do, like, will ruin the vibe, because the writing of the synopsis is like part of the sell, you know what I mean? The tagline is, there's always been a darkness to Elmar, which is the city of long shadows, the city of bad decisions, the city of last chances, also considered like the city of doorways to 1,000 other bad places, said to be a book about a city under threat of revolution and change. And let me just read a little bit of the synopsis because it's just so good. But never more so than now, the city chafes under the heavy hand of the Palestine occupation, the chokehold of its criminal underworld and the boot of its factory owners, the weight of its wretched poor and the burden of its ancient curse. What will be the spark that lights the conflagration? Despite the city's refugees, wanderers, murderers, madmen, fanatics, and thieves, the catalyst, as always, will be the anchorwood. That primeval remnant, that portal, when the moon is full to strange and distant shores. I mean, that sounds amazing. I am just hooked, and this cover, it's given like revolution vibes, as I just previously mentioned. But either way, I'm really excited to finally read a book by this very famous, very lauded and beloved author. And this also feels like the genre and type of story that I personally really enjoy, though I am getting more into sci-fi and I should check those out. But hey, I'm a sucker for fantasy. Next book I picked up is a lit fic novel that I've really had my eye on, and that is Trust by Hernan Diaz. And this actually won the Pulitzer Prize, so you know, lots of people have been enjoying this one. The synopsis of this book goes, even through the effervescence of the 1920s, everyone in New York has heard of Benjamin and Helen Rath. He is a legendary Wall Street tycoon, and she is the daughter of eccentric aristocrats. And they have risen to the top of seemingly endless wealth in the world at this time, even as the decade of this opulence draws to an end, going into the 1930s. But a mystery surrounds their immense fortune. Where did it come from? How can they maintain it? And this entire idea is speculated within a very famous novel released in 1937 called Bonds, which again, everyone in New York has seemingly read. This book spans a century of time and features 4 different competing narratives into conversation with one another, and I think it circles this family and this book, what is true, what is a lie. I'm just so curious about this. I also am really fascinated by the setting and the topic, this sort of Succession-esque family, perhaps, I don't know. Obviously, it's going to center really powerful people in New York City. I also love that there's this like fake book that's also at the heart of it too. It seems a little meta. I'm really curious to see how I'm going to enjoy this. Obviously, it's very lauded. A lot of people I know and really trust from a review point of view have really liked this book. So I decided to grab it when I saw it came out in paperback, and I will let you know. Speaking of books I've been meaning to pick up for forever, I also grabbed Parable of Talents by Octavia E. Butler. This, of course, is a sequel to The Parable of the Sower, which I read a few years ago and loved, though also was deeply disturbed by it. Parable of the Sower was truly just one of the best books I've ever read. It made my top books of the year, and it does have a sequel. I do believe this was actually supposed to be a trilogy, never completed, and I do know though that the impact of the second book leaves like a different taste to the entire trilogy, like knowing that it was never completed, so I'm also very curious about that. In this series, we're introduced to our main character, Lauren, and after a climate catastrophe occurred in the 2020s, society and government completely collapsed. Lauren lives in California with her family in a gated community where they all kind of protect and look out for one another. Lauren's father is a more prominent individual here, as he's also a preacher. Lauren, at the beginning of this book, begins to speculate and also deeply contemplate that something within this community needs to change, but also people in this world need to change, sort of let go of the expectations of the past and move forward to a new future that they can all create together. Lauren herself has something called hyperempathy, meaning she can feel the pain of others around her, and in a world that's very, very dangerous, this is something she has to keep secret. Lauren also begins to contemplate religion and begins to think about going on her own quest and destiny, and as crisis rocks her community, everything sort of changes. The first book is written very much like Lauren's diary, so you're kind of right in the thick of her contemplations and her perspectives, and we're kind of jumping around plot-wise, just depending on when and how Lauren kind of wants to contemplate and write the events down. First book, I really cannot emphasize enough how excellent it was, and I'm really curious to see how the story is going to develop into book 2, particularly around Lauren's philosophy, her expectations and perceptions of what future should be. I really feel like that is going to be center stage within this particular book, and I'm really excited to see how it's all going to unfold. I've heard amazing things about this. I feel like it's also, though, maybe gonna ruin my life. We'll have to find out. Alrighty, time to open up another package. Again, no knife, no scissors. Oh, right. Okay, I'm so excited about this book. The hype that I personally have put on this book based off of like a few lines I've heard from reviewers is almost bananas, but I don't know. This could be amazing. And the book I'm talking about is The Will of Many by James Isington, and this is Hierarchy Book 1. Patrick said, and I'm going to put this on Patrick, I hope I love this. He said this is the best magic school book he has read since The Name of the Wind. Let that just settle in. So I feel like, this could be something here. This could really be something here, okay? This book is set in a very elite academy, and in it we follow our main character who is a spy. In this world, which feels a little like Roman-esque, there is an empire called Canadan Republic and the Hierarchy, and they basically rule the world as we know it. And they oversee millions of people, and there's a very structured and set laws that people kind of fall into, and our main character basically passes himself off as an orphan, tests, and again gets into this very prestigious school, basically lets all of his teachers and fellow students believe that he is just like anyone else there, willing to train himself and also give up all of his power once he graduates to the empire itself, but he is harboring a secret. He is there to uncover a mystery, he is there to gather secrets, he's also there to uncover an ancient weapon. I am so Curious about this. Apparently this is fast-paced and intricate with a really, really fantastic plot. First book to a new series. I love any type of academy or school-based tale as well. Just from a general starting place from a plot point of view, I just feel like this could be a knockout. Again, the reviews are so strong, so I need to pick it up and check it out for myself. Alrighty, and the last book I picked up recently is Yellowface by R.F. Kuang, another highly anticipated release that I cannot wait to get to. This is R.F. Kuang's literary fiction debut, which I personally find so interesting. I've obviously read all of her fantasy releases, and they are very literary leading, if I'm being honest, but I'm curious to pick up her first, like, contemporary story. But this is a book about two authors, and it honestly sounds bananas, and I can't wait to see what in the world is going to happen. In the story, we follow our main character, Athena, and Athena, as well as her classmate June, were kind of praised to be like the next big up-and-coming authors. However, while Athena's first release never even got a paperback release, it absolutely flopped, June has quickly become a literary darling. And at the beginning of the story, though, Athena somehow accidentally witnesses a tragic accident impacting June and resulting in her passing, and she then steals June's unpublished, unseen manuscript, changes her name to something racially ambiguous, and passes it as her own. This book is said to be cutting and dark, and it's also said to call out elements of the publishing world. I feel like this is going to be one that's going to cause a lot of discussion, and I feel like you're going to read this and have quite a few opinions about it, which I always feel like is an exciting book to pick up. One that's going to leave an impact, and one that's going to make you want to like talk about it to the person next to you. That's what I'm hoping in terms of what this book is going to deliver. I pre-ordered it. It's here. I will be reading it very, very soon. Alrighty guys, those are all of the books I've picked up recently. Please let me know down below some books you've picked up, as I would love to know, and I will see you soon with another video soon. Goodbye.